Please welcome Marlise's husband, Eric Munoz, and her mother, Lynn Machado, from Fort Worth, Texas. Thank you both for being
Thank you.
here.
Thank you for having us here.
I'm so sorry for your loss to both of you. I know, Eric, the judge ultimately ruled that you could, in fact, take Marlise off life support. You did so on January 26th. What has this whole ordeal been like for you?
Oh, a nightmare. You wake up every day at her bedside hoping that it's just a bad dream. Hoping that you're going to wake up to her at your bedside and your baby in his crib like you did that night, like you went to bed that night. And, it's an emotional roller coaster that I hope no one ever has to go through.
You are a firefighter and a trained paramedic, and I know that Marlise was a paramedic as well.
Yes.
And when you found that she had collapsed on the kitchen floor, what did your training tell you?
It was bad. There's a certain discoloration of the body called cyanosis. It's when the body has lack of oxygen. And you normally start to see that in the thin skin, your fingertips, your lips, your eyelids. And I could see that before I turned her around and began CPR. I could see that in her legs, her shin splints, and I knew it was bad.
You knew.
Yeah.
And Lynn, I know you rushed to the hospital, and when did you realize that your daughter had suffered a devastating episode and that you probably wouldn't ever be with her again in the way that you had been?
Yes, they had brought us back initially to the ER room, and then they took us to a small office where we saw her CAT scan, and it showed her brain activities completely white. The brain stem was not functioning, and we knew then. We knew on November 26th that she had passed.
That she was brain dead,
That
and that's what the doctors had told you.
Yes.
And Eric, you sort of knew right away what you thought should be done because you had discussed it with your wife.
Yeah. Being in the medical field, being a fireman, I realized that I could be hurt or injured at any point in time or work in a wreck and something could happen. We see also families that, continue their family members, their loved ones on life support or the patient is bedridden, and we always said we don't want that.
So you had talked about it.
We talked about if I was ever in a condition to where I was bedridden or something to where I was on life support, that's, we consider it quality of life, and we didn't.
Having said that, Marlise at the time was 14 weeks pregnant. Was there any part of you that thought, Eric, I'll do whatever I need to do to keep my baby alive?
I have kept hope, but I found myself knowing what I know as a paramedic and knowing the facts that were presented to me with the medical information that the doctors showed me. I knew that the baby wouldn't have a good quality of life, if any. I mean, it could have been, born and died in a minute, 2 minutes, an hour. It could have been, and you do want to keep hope, but it's your medical training. It's not something you can just turn off and ignore.
What did the hospital say to you, Lynn, when you tried to explain Marlise's wishes?
Well, I argued with the doctors. They had moved Marlise up to the ICU so we'd have privacy and saying our final words with her. And the doctor met us and said that he'd just been made known about this little Texas law that nobody had heard about. The doctor hadn't heard about it, and other than the two co-authors that have gone public with their intent of the law, no one's...
The Texas law saying basically
that the hospital in Texas that you need to keep a patient on life support if they're pregnant.
Then in January, I know a sonogram was done on Marlise while she was still on life support. What did that sonogram show?
Of the baby?
Yes.
Of the fetus, it showed that there were some abnormalities. For a while, they couldn't determine the sex. It had water on the brain, and also there was a problem with the heart.
When you saw that sonogram, Eric, what was your reaction?
It hurts. It hurts to know that your baby is having those conditions. Unfortunately, it's not something that I didn't. I like I said, with the medical training, you expect that there was going to be some abnormalities due to how long her body, my wife's body, and the baby itself went without nutrients, oxygen flowing to it. So.
If the sonogram hadn't shown any abnormalities, do you think you would have felt any differently about your decision?
I can't say. I was presented, this was what was given to me, and all I can base my decision off of what was given to me and the best for my family.
It must have been so painful for both of you because here you're going through this very private tragedy, this terrible loss of your daughter and your wife, your grandchild, your child. And then it becomes sort of a springboard for a national debate on the topic. That must have felt so surreal to you.
Yeah, it's, you know, you see the news, you see people on one side of the fence and the other, you know, talking back and forth, and here you are in the middle, and you're like, you know they're talking about you, you know they're good comments, they're bad comments, or from both ends, and it's, you know, you didn't want this. Unfortunately, it was what was put in front of me. And it's, like I said, it's weird. It's weird to know that they're talking about you and they're saying some good things, some bad things, and, you know, that they're debating.
What about for you, Lynn? Was that odd?
It was odd in a way that we were so frustrated that we couldn't get the hospital to listen to what we were trying to say. We met with officials just a couple days after she was declared brain dead, and at that time it was the ethics committee with the attorney and 2 clergymen. And I mentioned to them, I understand the intent of the law, but I don't think it applies to a person that has passed. And they said, no, the law states that if they're a patient, they have to be kept on life support. And I remember when we got up to ICU, I turned to Eric, I said, this isn't right. We have to get the knowledge out there so people know, because we didn't know about it. And you'd ask Eric if he would have kept the same decision. For my husband and I, we would have. We had had several talks with our daughter, and we knew under no circumstances did she ever want to be on life support. So pregnant or not, we would have kept the same decision.